Maybe we are not given all of the tools and resources that we need to do something in the way we want to do it because we're actually being pushed to find a solution or a certain approach to do something that will actually be an asset to the project. I just don't want to stop too much, never too much, never too much. Hey friends, I'm Tiff and you're listening to That's Real, a podcast about creating the lives we want, not just the ones we were told to live. I'll be sharing everything I'm learning to live my life on my terms and hopes to inspire you to do the same. Let's redefine what's possible together. Hey friends, and welcome back to That's Real. I'm your host, Tiff. And I have been cracking up. I don't know why, like these silly little corny things just I think they're so funny. Like I was at this event the other day and this guy walks in and he was really excited to see one of his friends because I guess they hadn't seen each other in a while and they're talking for a bit. And as they're wrapping up the conversation, the girl was like, "Oh yeah, like it'd be great to get together." And he goes, "Yeah, let's make like tomatoes and catch up." I just thought it was so silly and I wrote it down because I don't know, I just thought it was a funny little thing that happened. But anyways, friends, welcome back to the podcast. I have a few That's Real moments for you guys. And for any of you guys who are new here, That's Real moments are basically anything that you feel like really resonates with you. It can be a story, a quote, something that happened. Basically anything that makes you say that's real, that sparks joy in some way is what we share on this podcast. Because I truly believe that it's in those moments where we get a glimpse into who we truly are. And I think the more we can tap into who we truly are, the more we attract all that is truly meant for us. So I've got a few for you guys today. And, they all kind of have a common thread that I personally think kind of uncovered a life lesson that I personally know I needed to hear. So I'll start with the first one. So the other day, I was just scrolling on Instagram and I saw this girl who was just talking about how much she hated Caesar salad wraps. And it was a really funny post. Like, it was meant to be funny and lighthearted. Like, she was like, Julius Caesar didn't know what he was doing, blah, blah, blah. It was funny. And something about it just made me want to research, like, how did the Caesar salad actually come to be? Because it's on basically every menu. I mean, at least most American restaurants have a Caesar salad on the menu. I mean, I personally love Caesar salad. I always have to do it with dairy-free dressing though, because your girl got all the intolerances, but I love a good Caesar salad. So I'm Googling it, and apparently there's some controversy around how it was actually made. But the story that I kept seeing popping up was that it was made in 1924 by this man named Caesar Cardini. And Caesar Cardini was an Italian immigrant who owned this restaurant in Mexico, in Tijuana, Mexico. And legend has it that on July 4th of 1924, there was a surge of people in his restaurant to the point that the kitchen was low on supplies. They were running out of food, basically. And Mr. Cardini had to improvise and just create something with the ingredients that he had on hand. So apparently, he just tossed the salad in the middle of the restaurant and started serving it out to everyone. And it became like an instant hit. He obviously continued to make it because, I mean, nowadays, again, it's everywhere, right? And it just started to make me think if he had had all of the supplies he actually needed for that day, if he had had all of the ingredients on hand to make, maybe the other dishes on the menu, would we have ever gotten the Caesar salad? And this also made me think about the Luther Vandross documentary. Oh, it's such a good documentary. Highly recommend. And there's a part in the documentary where they're talking about, before he became famous, what were the different things that he was doing. And apparently one thing he did before, he became the megastar that we now all know him to be was working on jingles. So I don't know if the younger generation will know what a jingle is. I honestly don't even know if they're still in advertisements anymore. I don't even watch a lot of advertisements now with, just the social media boom and there's so much content. But at least when I was growing up, a lot of restaurants and honestly a lot of businesses used to have these little jingles. The one that I always remember is the one NSYNC did with Chili's, the Chili's baby back ribs barbecue sauce. You remember that one? Someone comment below if people still do jingles or the last one that you've seen because I honestly, again, I don't know if it's still a thing. But anyways, there was a point in time where Luther was singing jingles for, businesses, restaurants, etc. And apparently the very first jingle he worked on was for a restaurant called Gino's Pizza. And the producer had asked him, like, "Oh, can you give me something to make me feel like the pizza is just sizzling hot?" Okay. So Luther's like, "I got you." And he goes, "Gino's, you'll come for it sizzling hot." Okay. So he did that vibrato thing, and everyone lost their minds. They were like, "Oh my God, this is gonna be your thing." And it was in that moment where he was like, "Okay, I'm not gonna do this in any other jingles," because he knew he wanted to save it for himself. It ended up, again, becoming you know, a big part of his singing style. At least in a lot of the Luther Vandross songs that I've heard, he does that kind of like vibrato thing with his voice. Like, that song, "All My Love." Not me trying to do it. I really can't sing. I just don't wanna stop too much, never too much, never too much. He literally does it in most of his songs. And I was sitting there thinking like, wow, if he had surpassed that point of his career, if he wasn't open, to doing other things and just kind of wanted to rush towards stardom, would he have ever come across the singing style that, to me was such a big part of his career? I'll give you another one. I was watching the Steven Spielberg documentary, another great documentary. There's a part in the documentary where they're talking about when he worked on Jaws. And so when they had started filming, they had this like huge shark prop that they had wanted to use to kind of film the shark scenes. I think the first time they tried to use it, it sunk and was just literally ruined. And they were just like, "Oh my gosh, like, what are we gonna do?" Because they knew it was gonna take the team like 3 to 4 weeks to rebuild the prop, but they didn't exactly have that time, they had to keep filming. So they were kind of like, "Okay, what can we use so that, people get the sense that the shark is there even if you can't actually see it?" So they use these like big yellow barrels to kind of mimic the shark movements. And I think as they were filming, they were kind of like, "Oh, you're actually more scared by what you don't see than by what you do see." So they kind of found like, okay, by actually not showing the shark, it produces a lot more anxiety. It produces a lot more suspense. And it totally changed the psychology of the film. And then what happened with that film? Jaws made more money than any other film at the time. And I was kind of like, wow. So had they had the shark, and showed it in the scenes, would the film had been as successful? Would they have come up with that way of filming? I don't know. So as I thought of these, 3 different stories, the Caesar salad story, the Luther Vandross story, the Jaws story, I was like, maybe we are not given all of the tools and resources that we need to do something and the way we want to do it because we're actually being pushed to find a solution or a certain approach to do something that will actually be an asset to the project or to whatever it is, that we're working on. And I don't know if you guys have experienced this, but I do this all the time where I'm like, dang, if I just had, a team or a certain network or community or whatever, I'd be able to just soar and do the things that I want to do right now. And, there was a time where I'd get really frustrated, like, "Oh, if I just had this, it would make this project better or whatever." And a lot of times I'm a one woman show in what I'm creating, right? Like with my podcast, with my YouTube content, all of that, it's usually just me. I'm now kind of starting to look at things differently where it's like, maybe I'm being put in this situation for a reason. Maybe it's because there's something that I need to do on my own or a solution that I personally need to come up with that will contribute to the success of whatever I'm working on. And it's honestly helping me surrender to the process versus being so attached to the way that I want to do things. Because I can get really attached. I feel like it's a part of the perfectionist in me who just wants things done a certain way. And it's really helping me just open myself up to a different way of doing things, a different approach. Like it doesn't always have to be exactly the way that you envision it. Because sometimes the way you envision it is limiting yourself. And I think especially when we're in the beginning stages of creating, I think I was talking about this a little bit on my last episode too, how although yes, it can be frustrating because I feel like there's a lot to learn and a lot to do, and sometimes you have to get scrappy. I feel like being in the beginning stages of working on something is when, you do get to kind of test certain things out and try and find different solutions and ways of doing things. Also, I was watching Legacy Talk, which is Lena Waithe's podcast, and she was interviewing Ava DuVernay on her just like creative journey and just how she came to be as a director, filmmaker, and all of the things. Ava was talking about, when she was starting out, I think the first film, I think it was a documentary, I think she had like $5,000 to do it. And she was basically saying that, when you're just starting out, that's when you get to be the most free with your creations. I also feel like that's when you're able to just pour your true essence into a project, right? Because there's a lot less pressure. There's no one on your back to get things done a certain way. There aren't crazy targets that you have to reach. You're not I mean, yes, I guess sometimes you are kind of thinking about the outcome, but I feel like there's less pressure to deliver at a certain scale. And it's helping me to kind of reframe certain parts of my creative journey, whether it be the parts of the journey where I'm like, oh, I don't want to be in this position. I just want to get to the thing and get to the success of it all or whatever it is. It's like, it's actually making me feel a little bit more grateful for these times where I'm just, thugging it out, trying to figure out how to do the thing. And oh my gosh, like I even remember when I was like really on it with YouTube and I was putting out usually like a vlog every single week. Friends, I would be up until like 3, 4 in the morning just hustling, just trying to do what I could do to get that video up. I was teaching myself Adobe Premiere Pro, which it was so funny. Actually, when I was abroad and a news outlet had come to my apartment to film like a segment, and he was asking me like, "Oh, like what editing software do you use?" And I was like, "Oh, I use Adobe Premiere Pro." And he was like, "What?" He was like, "That's what we use to edit." And I was like, "Oh my gosh, like I've literally taught myself how to use tools that people actually in the industry who are producing for TV are using." And it was such like a wow moment. And even just thinking about that time in my life, and if any of you guys are on this content creator journey, I know it's not easy, but I'm grateful for the times where when I didn't have the resources to just hire an editor. Because if I did, I don't think I would have ever learned how to use certain software. And, oh my God, there were times where I was in Photoshop trying to figure out graphics. I feel like this is before, was Canva a thing then? I don't know. I don't even know what tool I first started like using for for my thumbnails, but I was in the thick of it, just rolling up my sleeves and learning what I had to learn in order to just create content for my YouTube channel. And honestly, even now, like with the podcast, I don't have a producer. I'm coming up with the topics and everything on my own, which I think is great because it helps me show up in a way that's truly me. I kind of think that's what Ava meant too when she shared that. It's like you again, you just get to do what you want and have fun with it too. A lot of these topics that I'm sharing with you guys are just things that I think are interesting. No one's like you have to talk about this or you have to talk about that. But all of this just really helps me reframe and not want to bypass any part of my journey because you never know what part in your journey might be the unlock that you need to get to where you're ultimately trying to go. I mean, it's not to say that this only happens when you're in the beginning stages of whatever you're doing or creating, because again, like Steven Spielberg, I mean, Jaws definitely was Jaws his first movie? I don't know. Wait, let's look it up because I honestly can't remember. Okay, so it says Jaws, okay, it wasn't his first movie, but it was his breakthrough film that launched his career. Oof. Can you imagine? Like that one thing that you probably thought you needed for a huge film that you're working on, that's probably like your biggest opportunity at the time, is not working. Like you don't have the prop that you need, so you have to pivot, and it actually ends up being what makes the film a huge success. Like, what? I guess what I'm trying to say with all of this is be open to pivoting. I also think be open to seeing, like, okay, if doing it this way isn't working, I'm not going to force it to happen how I want it to happen. I'm going to be open to doing things differently. And as I'm saying this to you, I'm also saying it to myself because I can be stubborn and I can be hard-headed and I can be like, "Oof, I want this to be how I want it to be," but I'm really trying to let go of that because one, because of these examples, and two, because I don't know, I don't want to get stuck in the mindset of just thinking things can only be successful by doing it one way. Like, I think we have limitless there are limitless possibilities. There are always different ways of thinking and doing and approaching things. And I also think the more flexible you are in what you're creating, I think it just really benefits whatever you're doing as a whole. This also comes to creating your life, and I think I've told this story before, but for any of you guys who are new here, when I was working in New York and just miserable and trying to find a new job, literally no doors were opening, and it kind of forced me to pivot, and that's what prompted me to just explore the MBA in Paris, which ended up being like a really big chapter for me, and honestly in terms of and especially in terms of me just growing and evolving into the person who I am today. Because there was a point where I was really attached to all of my friends and all of my family and was hanging on to every single word that they said. And it was hard for me to just have my own opinion on things sometimes. And again, I always say, I think I really needed that chapter of just going and doing something on my own without friends, without family, to really just grow up in a way. Like, I really feel like that was a huge chapter of becoming for me. So, yeah, friends, I do think that sometimes the way we want to do things can be so limiting. And I personally am trying my hardest to not limit myself anymore. We really do always have what we need to do the thing that we feel called to do. Like, if it's placed on our hearts, if we are excited about it, if we can see the vision, if we even sometimes if you can't see the whole vision, maybe you just have the first step. There's always a way. There's always a way. And I was actually also just watching a talk on YouTube with Tyler, the creator, and he was talking to I think he was talking to like some creative students, and someone asked this question of, what if the vision you have is just so big and you feel like you don't have everything you need to do what it is you want to do? He was like, well, just start with what you do have. If you have to do it on a smaller scale, that's fine, but don't stop yourself from doing it just because you feel like you can't do it on a huge stage or at the capacity that you think you need to do it at. Start with where you're at and see what happens. And sometimes I also think if we were truly meant to do something in the exact way that we have it in our minds, then we would have the resources to do it in that way, or we would find the resources, whatever. But if we don't have everything that, again, we think we need to do the thing, then maybe we're just not meant to have those resources at that time. It doesn't mean don't do the thing. It just means, again, do it in a different way. So yeah, I'm really trying to practice this and remember that it is totally okay for things to be just not exactly how you might have wanted them to be, because I think it opens the door for things to be even better. So the question I'm going to leave you guys with is, What is something you're not doing because you think you don't have the right resources or because you can't do it in the way that you want to do it? And how can you still make a step forward despite all of that? It's something that I'm going to be thinking about too. If you find any creative solutions for doing something, share it with the class. I'd love to hear from you. So that's all from me, friends. Thank you so much for watching and for listening. And if you are watching this on YouTube, please make sure to like, comment, and subscribe. And if you are listening to this on Spotify or Apple Podcasts, please make sure to leave me a 5-star rating and review. It really does help a lot. Thanks again for tuning in, and I'll catch you in the next episode. Bye.